Causes of migration. This gets really hard because all this is really migration is a really personal thing, but at the same time, it's incredibly political because, first of all, don't think most migrations are not international. So most people do not move across the international border. A migration it could be something just as simple as moving houses. It's like right now, my brother-in-law and sister-in-law are moving from downtown Minneapolis to South Minneapolis. That's migration. It could also mean semi-permanent, whether that's going off to college and being there for 9 months and coming back. And so it's all migration in the whole. And what you define as permanent, semi-permanent, whatever. But the reasons why you move is push versus pull factors. Push factors are negative circumstances, reasons to move away or avoid a place, and pull factors bring you in or make you stay there. There's a pretty simple equation out there. It's Everett Lee's push-pull factors, push-pull theory, that you have here's where you were, here's where you're going to be, more negatives than positives, more positive than negative things, and everything in between is an intervening obstacle. Now, it could be an intervening opportunity as well. If you go back here, obstacles are barriers, and sometimes they're mountains, sometimes they're oceans, but sometimes they're paperwork, or sometimes they're a passport, and sometimes they're money. But sometimes it's an opportunity. And maybe it's an opportunity that you want to stay longer in a place, which might mean that most migrants do move in what is called step migration. We're going to look at all these things as we move back here. But first, let's look at some types of factors: economic, social, political, environmental. And migrants due to conflict and natural disasters. This is in 2015. Conflict is in orange. Blue is disasters. Environmental push-pull, such as desertification, moving out of red areas, trying to move to green or yellow areas. Like when the Syrian refugee crisis happened, yes, it was conflict, but was it also an environmental push with water and more desertification as people moved into Europe? People definitely made that argument. Environmental push-pull factors, Hurricane Katrina. People leaving after Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans and moving out to different places. I know Houston and Dallas especially had huge flux of people moving. Okay, so here's the Syria one. And again, most people do this in step migrations, but think of everything they had to get through to get into Europe as they went, whether that be physical geography, like the Mediterranean Sea. And the Mediterranean Sea is a hotspot for migration right now, as people leaving Africa trying to get into Europe, and then the difficulties there. But then you also have, once you got onto the shore, okay, EU restrictions. You might have walls to be there. Okay, and in reality, it's also an economic pull because of people there. Okay, so here it is again, the people moving into Europe. Okay, how can you get past the Mediterranean Sea and through EU things? And this is where political pull, but it's also political pull here because, well, but then it's also there's political obstacles of all the paperwork and legal versus illegal immigration that takes place. It's migration is not easy. How about in Africa? This is rural to urban islands of development. These are basically all just major cities that people are moving there. Let's go to Nairobi, Kenya here, where people move in there, and then it's a lot of males because if I go back here, now this is the slide we are on. There's one other slide with this one. This is E.G. Ravenstein's Laws that Form Migration Theory. Again, this is theory. And so, again, most of this see majority. Okay. And so majority of migrants move a short distance. This is what I was getting at earlier, where more people move a short distance than a long distance. Most people don't move internationally, but when they do, it's most likely to an urban center. You don't really see people moving much to the middle of Nebraska. People move to New York or San Francisco or Minneapolis or Chicago, just any major city that you can come up with. Most migration is done in a step format. I got a slide for that. Where is it? Here we go. So this is where Syrian migrants coming out, and they would try to get through here. So this is entry points into the EU, but then they'd go slowly, step by step by step, trying to get into Europe. Another slide with this is people moving out of Afghanistan or Ethiopia or Somalia, and they'd slowly but surely move. And then along the way, they'd have different steps and to try to get into Italy or Greece or even Libya, etc. Here's the Balkans route used by people coming out of Turkey. It's hard. Migration is really hard, and there's so many different political obstacles with that. Here's just some South China look, or I'm sorry, South Asia, Southeast and South Asia look, where Chinese people moving more and more in South Asia to show more political clout. And this is just Africa, where you have people moving inside of Africa as a whole and where they're going to. I know this looks really confusing, but in the end, it's almost all to city centers. Okay, rural to urban migration is by far the largest migration pattern right now in the world. More at this, most migrants are rural to urban. Every migration has a counter migration. Now, this can get to be tricky because every migration has a counter migration. That can mean it could mean that as people left Syria, people then moved into those cities to take their place. It could mean that people left those places in Europe where people had been, or both. Most migrants are young adults. Most migrants, you want to move before you have kids because kids are really, really hard. Kids are really, really hard to move. Now, number 7 has gotten to be a little trickier time here. International migrants are males and internal are females. That can be true, but in general, it's this. The longer the distance, the more likely it is to be a male as opposed to a female. So, what should you know from this? You should know these pull factors intervening. You should know all of these. Oh, I didn't talk about forward capital. I will come back to that. Let me get to that one. Forward capital is building a new capital to try to get people to move. Brazil did this. They moved their capital off the coast and moved it to Brasilia. $2 billion, and they built it shaping like an airplane. Then you also have places. Pakistan did this with Islamabad. Tanzania has done this. Argentina is talking about it. Indonesia is doing it, but they're also doing it because Jakarta is below sea level, and as sea levels rise, they want to prevent Jakarta from sinking, so they're moving it out of Jakarta. That's the concept of a forward capital. Concept of a forward capital. You should know your vocab terms from here for sure, and then you don't need to memorize Ravenstein's laws, but it's just a general theory on how and why people move.